What's going on, Falcon fan? This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. So today we're going to talk about some clarity starting to come to us from the Atlanta Falcons organization. The new brass is really telling us, giving information. Some of the stuff that we already expected, but now we know it's 100% is what we thought all along. Um, like I said yesterday, I still expect more decisions to be made between now and March 9th. So we'll definitely stand by for those other decisions. Some more definitely personnel decisions that Atlanta Falcons is going to be making. But for right now, we're definitely going to talk about um, Kyle Pitts and Kirk Cousins, the two that we got information on today. We'll also talk about some of the things we heard from both our GM, new GM, and our new head coach as well, from their interviews that they had um, throughout, today's combine. They already have started interviews with the players. Those things happen, you know, early in the week, nighttime, and stuff like that. They're going to get the medicals and things like that. So, they're doing in their draft preparation as they should be. They came later to the game, so they're trying to play catch up while they do all that stuff. So, guys, that's what we're going to talk about today. So, with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that notification bell so you know I drop another video. Please hit the like button, as I know you guys out here to talk about. And please share my video throughout the YouTube universe so more people can come hear me talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. So, um, talk about the franchise tag for Kyle Pitts. This is something that personally I expected to happen. I wasn't 100% sure because you never know. Like I said, we don't really know the this new regime, and so it's kind of really hard to kind of determine what was going to really happen with this with Kyle Pitts' situation. But um, Kyle Pitts put a lot of exciting things out on tape. His especially his first season and I guess his last season that we just had. In the middle it was a mixed bag. Like I said, in 2024, believe it or not, I thought he had a decent season. Um, over 700-yard receiving in that season as well. So the last two seasons he has really played, you know, a whole lot better than he played in that two middle season. I think, of course, he took that injury. Ironically, the injury was against the Chicago Bears. Um, and then, it took probably a season and a half for him to get back to where he needed to be. So the fact that Kyle Pitts, is back in form, I still think he has a level to get to, you know, and being with Kevin Stefanski, who like to utilize the tight end position, um, I think he's going to get more to display some of the things that we all thought that he could be coming out of college from the University of Florida um, back in 2021. So there you is with that. His cap number they have already updated because they made it official today. His cap number is 15,160,000. Now the Atlanta Falcons have until July the 15th to try to um, come up with a actual long term deal with Kyle Pitts. Um, this right here, prevents him from going out to the market because if Kyle Pitts would have went out to the market, more than likely we probably was going to lose him because some team, if you look at the salary cap that's out there right now currently for teams have a lot of money. So um, this afforded the Atlanta Falcons to negotiate with Kyle Pitts and his agent to try to come up with a long term deal. So we love that. David Mubagala. I know we heard that name before. Um, that's the same agent as Michael Parsons, the same agent as George Pickens as well. So you know, I think it's the same agent of AJ Terrell and JC Bates, if I'm not mistaken. So you know, the Atlanta Falcons already have ties with this agent, and no bad blood there. Hopefully they can get something, done. With that being said, though, with Kyle Pitts' new franchise tag, it brings the Atlanta Falcons cap space to 11 million 332,519. So you said with my top teeth. I got all my teeth, man. It's a big gap. Hear that? so like I said, freaking 11,302,519. So that's where um the Atlanta Falcons are sitting right now with the the salary cap. That's why I do believe that Atlanta Falcons is probably more than likely is going to go ahead and um, make some more moves here before the 19th. I think you can expect somebody like um, Darnell Mooney to be cut. I really believe that. I think somebody like Darnell Mooney can be cut. Also believe that um, we might lose Kate Ellis as well. We'll talk about some of the things that the GM said about some of our free agents today. But guys like Kate Ellis, of course, we know we'll talk about Kirk Cousins in just a minute as well. But if you get rid of Darnell Mooney, and I think you say about $7 million there, um, you also have some more guys that you could consider to let go as well. But man, they're gonna have to create some more cap space now. $11 million. They do have to add players within free agency. I do believe that because they only got 5 picks. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. But with the Kyle Pitts franchise tags, it brings the Atlanta Falcons to about $11 million in cap space. You got to remember they have to have money for their draft picks as well. So it's not even 11 million. It's probably more like 6 million. Um, you know, because you have to factor in the draft picks as well. So Atlanta Falcons have work to do if they do want to be players in free agency. So we'll definitely, I suspect, some more moves. Don't have to just be releases. They also can probably create some room um, by restructuring some deals. The guys, the targets probably want to restructure is guys like Chris Lindstrom, Jesse Bates, Jake Matthews. All those guys' contract can be restructured, and if you do, you add some more cap space there to be a player in free agency. Also, if they wanted to, they could actually um, get deals done with Drake London as well. His cap hit is 16 million because they paid a his for your option. They was to do go ahead and actually make a decision and um, go ahead and extend him. They can drop his cap number as well. And then of course if you extend Kyle Pitts, you can drop that cap number. So those are some things they could be working on, before March 9th, right? That's when the tempering period start for the free agency. So those are some of the things um, that is definitely going to be what we can definitely look at for the Atlanta Falcons. All right. One last thing about Kyle Pitts is that we keep hearing our GM talking about draft picks. Um, the flexibility by franchising Kyle Pitts also gives them an opportunity to, if they could actually trade him on that franchise tag. So that could be something to look at, to get more draft picks. Don't see that happen because if you listen to the head coach, you listen to the GM, they like what they see in Kyle Pitts. So I think it's more than likely they want him to be part of the team instead of just using him as a trade chip. But you never know. Somebody come with one like what they call those grandfather offers for a player. Definitely, um, we'll see what happens. He mentioned that last time they was here when they traded Khalil Mack, right? They got a second round pick in that trade. So somebody want to call for a second round pick for Kyle Pitts. You never know. You might have some buyer, some sellers there from the Atlanta Falcons. All right, all right, all right. Um, The next topic is talking about Kirk Cousins, right? So when you talk about Kirk Cousins, um, it's just like it says, he is out. They're going to designate him as a June 1 cut, and what that does spread his contract over 2 seasons, um, 27 and 20, yeah, 26 and 27. So that's what's going to happen with that. Currently, right now, you know, Kirk Cousins is guaranteed $10 million. So the Atlanta Falcons will only get about $1.3 million in cap savings for cutting Kirk Cousins this year. However, if Kirk Cousins signs with another team, um, just say if they sign him for a $10 million contract, that means the Atlanta Falcons won't have to pay $10 million to Kirk Cousins. So that's how that works. Since they cut him, the guaranteed money that is owed to him, whatever team he signs with, um, basically would take that off the Atlanta Falcons' hand, and the Atlanta Falcons. So just say if they sign him for 5 million, they can get $5 million back. So it's just looking at it in those instances where the Atlanta Falcons could, you know, benefit a little bit for Kirk Cousins signing with another team. Um, and we'll see what happens. We also heard from the GM is they're not planning on re-signing Kirk Cousins, so that's not in the cards. A lot of people thought that might be the case, but the GM kind of emphasized today that that would not be the case. So he is gone. He's no longer Atlanta Falcons. His 2 year career here in Atlanta was definitely something to behold. Right, the first 9 games it was exciting, right? They had Kirktober going on. He was doing the swag surf in the building, going back and forth. It was hype. And then he had that 5 game stretch where he got benched for Michael Penix Jr. And then, of course, we know he came back for the last 8 games this season um, for Atlanta Falcons and ended up winning the last 4 games um, for them. But at this point in time, I don't know Kirk Cousins' trajectory. Now we know he has made bukus and bukus loads of money for during his career. So if he decided to retire, he could definitely do that. He actually looked pretty good. You know, on TV, filling in for Matt Ryan during the Super Bowl week and stuff like that. So that could be something that he might want to take up. But I definitely believe he will have options to go to other teams to help other teams out. But it depends on which teams he might want to consider. A lot of people thinking Minnesota because of their quarterback situation with JJ McCarthy. He could go back there. And definitely probably be something that he would consider, going back to Minnesota because that was his home for a while. Um, some people mention Atlanta, but like I said, according to the GM, that's not going to be the case. So that's one of the things we won't see. And you know, I don't see the Jets. Jets need a quarterback. I don't think Kurt would want to put himself through that in a rebuild situation like that. So we'll definitely have to see. But guys, you know, this right here situation with Kirk Cousins, you know, just kind of put a ribbon and a button on the whole um, last regime, right? Decision to go out 2 years ago, sign Kirk Cousins to a $180 million contract, 100 million guaranteed, and then 4 months later, draft Michael Penix Jr. and it all turns over on his head. And this is where we're at right now. Um, the new regime is going to take cap hits in the next 2 seasons here, but that'll be okay because they're looking towards the future and trying to build from what they have going forward. So the Kirk Cousins chapter is over. Um, it was not all bad, but it definitely wasn't what we wanted when they decided to give him $180 million contract. So I would say it was a failure if you want to just be honest about it. Um, yeah, and just like Dark Marv said, it was a mistake. Hindsight 2020, yes, it definitely was a mistake if you look at the outcome of what transpired over those last 2 seasons. That 5 game span that he had when he had 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions was just that's pretty much sealed his time here in Atlanta. That 5 game span that he had in 2024. To be honest with you, um, that 5 game span, 1 touchdown, 9 interceptions. I mean, that last game we played him, the last game he played in 2024 on Monday Night Football, he looked like the worst player on the field in that game. He could not drive the ball. Now come to find out he had, elbow issues, whatever, got hurt, but he refused to come out the game. It was just selfish, to be honest with you. But you don't have to relive all that stuff. So that's where we're so that's what we're seeing. Um, Eddie Williams said Jeff Albrecht is stumping his feet hard on Ken Ellis. Yep, yep, yes. I mean, he pretty much said that we lose Kate Ellis, we're losing 2 people. So of course, Jeff Albrecht is trying to keep Kate Ellis in the building. We'll see what happens with that. You know, no need to discuss Kurt. He's history now, 100%. We can go ahead and move on, but he's out. And like I said, these two, topics that we talked about with Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts. This is not a surprise. It's something that we probably expected for like the last month or so. Kirk Cousins probably the last 2 months, but you know, either way it goes, we got clarification today from the GM himself, and I like the directness to it. Don't beat around the bush. Just go ahead and say what you got to say. Um, they didn't ask any too many questions about James Pierce Jr. Because they pretty much just said that they're waiting on the legal matters to get sorted out. Pretty not really much to talk about until they're able to find out, all the details on what's going to happen with James Pierce. It was a report out about him that said that he's still saying that he's innocent on some of those charges. So you got to let the legal system play out because obviously, it always 2 sides to a story, right? Charges are charges, but at the same time, um, they got to be proved guilty before you can just go ahead and you know just crucify somebody for what could be some of the stuff out there. We don't have all the details. Um, we did hear from D. Orlando Ledbetter today. He was on 92.9 The Game, and he mentioned that his expectations for that James Pierce Jr. situation is to try to get the young man help first of all, um, you know, and try to get him some help with counseling and things like that. But also, it's you got to deal with the legal issues with on the outside, and then you have to deal with the punishment the NFL is going to levy as well. So all those fronts are definitely something that's going to play out sometime soon. So we'll just have to see how it play out. Um, it'd be interesting to see if anything has happened from a legal standpoint before training camps. So we'll just have to wait to see on that. All right, and that's what we had from Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts. Let's talk about the thoughts what we heard from the GM today. Um, besides from giving us the news on Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts, he all talk about draft picks, right? And he loves draft picks, and that's why I mentioned the potential trade, bait for Kyle Pitts because he's trying to recoup some draft capital here. Um, Now he did mention that he could end up with 5, but he are in trying to figure out how he can get more draft picks. The whole idea of that is the more swings you get at bat, the more opportunity you have a chance to hit a home run, right? So, um, also he mentioned that this is the last time that the Atlanta Falcons will have only 5 picks. So he wants to value those picks. He wants to make sure that those picks that the Atlanta Falcons get, you can put those to use, right? The more depth you can create, especially from a draft standpoint, because draft picks and young players are so much cheaper on your salary cap, right? And you always hear the term building through the draft. This is what you know Ian Cunningham philosophy is. I kind of like it. But so it's going to be interesting to see from a draft pick standpoint how many, if any, draft picks that he can maybe recruit, um, coming up. What's going on, Falcon Mafia? Let's ride. Um, so we'll definitely have opportunity to see where this all plays out with Kyle with Ian Cunningham and the draft picks, right? Um, he was also asked about Darnell Mooney. Those are some of the things we're working out. Like I said, I expect some more moves to be made. Um, Darnell Mooney might, based off the tape and stuff, he might get opportunity to stay, but they don't have owe him any more guaranteed money, so it'll be a clean cut for him. I think he get like 7 million, if I'm not mistaken. Let me take a look and see. Look at his cap number here, because I got it all. Yep. So the post June 1 cut for Darnell Mooney. So if they do post June 1 cut, they can recoup um 11 11.9, right? Before pre June 1, they get about 774, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Being able to recoup more cap space um in those cases, right? So he's a guy that definitely they might want to consider. Um, Another name that was mentioned was Cardell Hodge, um, about 2 million there. So you get up to about $9 million. We're cutting both of those guys, Cardell Hodge and um, Darnell Mooney. The reason I'm calling out receivers because this draft class is really deep in receivers, really deep in receivers. And the biggest reason is because the fact that they franchise tag Kyle Pitts pretty much gives them a second option at the receiver, receiver catching position with Kyle Pitts. Um, I don't think if you're gonna franchise tag a guy at 15 million and don't utilize him. So, you got Drake London probably is going to be the number one option, but Kyle Pitts is going to play a big role, which means that you don't need to have, so many receivers that's going to garner so much, you know, um, attention. However, you can go out and get some young talent around receivers that could be really special for you down the road. So um, I think some people mock um, Zachariah to the Atlanta Falcons, the young receiver out of Georgia, right? They say he might go in the maybe third or fourth round. So that's where you can look at Atlanta Falcons potentially could have somebody like that. So those are some of the things that we're looking at from what we heard from Ian Cunningham. He had a talk with the AtlantaFalcon.com as well, and they mentioned he talked about you know pretty much hitting the ground running. Um, Spent 10 days doing draft prep. Right, like I said, they were behind. Spent 10 days doing draft preps. Met with the coaching staff, particular the OC and DC, and got their vision for what kind of players that they need to be looking for, in this draft process. Um, Constant communication going back and forth for clarity, but all these things that we heard from um, Ian Cunningham, I thought was really, really good. And man, I'm getting excited. I'm just curious to see what they do between now and March 9th. Kind of give you a clear more idea of what kind of potential things they can do in free agency. So stand by for that. But that's pretty much all we heard from the GM today. Um, Biggest thing I like is he was right to the point. He didn't beat around the bush when he talked about Kyle Pitts and what he said about Kirk Cousins. And I love the non-committal on all the other players as well, right? Because you got to be able to make sure that you're making good roster sound decisions. You're not being having knee-jerk reactions and making hasty decision because you're trying to win and put out your every apples in one bucket this year. That's not what you want to do. You want to make sure that you're building for now and the future. So I like that mindset. Um, Next, let's talk about what we heard from the head coach. The first thing we heard, and let's just go ahead and get it out the way. He said that he's excited, to work with Michael Penix Jr. The biggest thing for Michael Penix Jr. is for him to get healthy. Everybody wanted to get him to go ahead and name Michael Penix Jr. the starter moving forward, but I don't think it's the time for that right now. Michael Penix, especially, is not even healthy, so it would be, you know, just not being smart to go out and go ahead and make him the starter. But the way the head coach and the GM talking about Michael Penix, they are trying to put him in the best position to be successful. If you look at the establishment of the coaching stuff, you can see where they definitely want to be able to work with a young quarterback. One of the questions he was asked on 929 the game was about him being up on the center, and if you look at the numbers, man, it's really really low, right? And those one of the things that Michael Penix is gonna have to work on. I know he said it's not a big problem, and he has been up on the center before, but majority of his time, from his last 2 years in Washington, and most of his career in the NFL has been, shotgun, pistol, or shotgun, whatever, however you want to call it, but it has not been up on the center. We know for a fact when you're looking at what Kevin Stefanski loves to do um, with his quarterbacks, he will be up under center a lot. So if that's something that he has to learn, um, we'll see. But it sounds like Kevin is excited about um, what he can get out of Michael Penix Jr. The biggest thing is for Michael Penix Jr. to do is now to get healthy. Um, and they probably got a pretty good idea. Remember, at Flowery Branch, the Emory Hospital is like right there next door. And I'm pretty sure they don't talk to the doctors and stuff. They got a good gauge on where they think Michael Penix, is at in his rehab. Um, and if you do the timetable, he had the surgery on November 26th, if I'm not mistaken. And if you count from that to probably August, that puts you at like 9 months, right? So he's going to be right there on the door of being able to be ready for the game win of the season, or, you know, in that sweet spot. So he has opportunity to actually start the season, on the field, but the preparation and all that stuff, and not rushing, doing what the doctors tell him to do, that's going to be the biggest key for Michael Penix Jr. We have a comment here. It said Falcons a lock for a championship next year if they move to the NXL. Got jokes. Got jokes. We also heard from Kevin Stefanski talk about Kyle Pitts. He's excited about him. The way he talked about being able to move him around, being able him to create mismatches, the things that we thought Kyle Pitts could be able to do. He's seen all that on film, so he's excited to work with Kyle Pitts. And he understands Kyle Pitts is not one of those traditional tight ends where you're gonna be blocking a lot online. No, he want to use his skill set. He understands that. Um, and said if you want to block, put another offensive lineman out there. So I just like the philosophy is making the players be the best version of themselves instead of trying to make them be something that they're not. I think that's really important for um, all players, and I think coaching staffs need to be able to some of the best coaches is do that with their players, right? We talked about Bijan Robinson being able to utilize him. Um, I expect them to run a lot more gap this year than they did in years past, which is for Bijan is something that it shouldn't have a problem with because that's what he did pretty much his entire tenure at the University of Texas running gap scheme. Um, However, they're going to still run the wide zone because Atlanta Falcons is one of the best teams in the league that run wide zone as well. So not going to abandon the wide zone, but they're going to be able to switch it up and do some different things um, for Bijan Robinson to be able to, showcase his talents, being able to use him out of the backfield. Um, he mentioned, different nuances, how to use him as a pass catcher. I'm excited to see those things, and find out how they're going to be able to do this as well. One of the things they talked about was asked him about, Tommy Reese calling plays. Um, for him, he said the most important thing is being able to, um, game plan throughout the week. That's the most important thing. The plays itself is still an art to calling plays. Everybody, I'm pretty sure most people understand that. So it is a send up plays, send up plays, send up plays, right? So it is the art to that. Nobody can't say anybody just go out there and call plays, right? Because you got to be able to set up what you're trying to do, right? Keep the defense on their heels and things like that. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with with you know with Tommy Reese calling plays for first time full season. It's not the first time because he did call some last year. I think the last 8 games maybe. So um, so we'll definitely get an opportunity to see what what Reese will be able to do. So I'm just trying to see, did he mention anything else? Um, I think that's it, guys. Let's see here. Got a comment. The Falcons have not got nothing on San Francisco 49ers. Well, I can tell you this. The Falcons got just as many Super Bowls as San Francisco 49ers in the last 2 decades. Hey, how about that? Yep. So, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But guys, this was a short video today. I just wanted to come out here and talk about what we heard from our general manager, what we heard from our head coach. Um, I'm excited to see the combine. The players go out and do their thing, and potential guys that Atlanta Falcons can target. In the later rounds. Of course, we know Atlanta Falcons do not have a first round pick. I think it's would be you know not good time management going out looking at guys that potentially go in the first round. So they need to make sure they focus on those later round picks. Um, Ian Cunningham mentioned a lot about analytics and things like that. So they're going to utilize analytics this year, being able to look at potential because he talked about the sweet spot in the draft and things like that. We do know that the cornerback and the receiver position is a little bit more deeper. Pass rush is not so much. Quarterbacks, of course, is going to be going back to that season Desmond Ritter came out where only one quarterback went in the first round. Potentially could see the same thing this year with Mendoza going number one, and then a lot of other guys sliding out to the second and later round. So we'll definitely get to take a look at all those things. But the main thing that we're definitely going to be able to um, get from the Falcons is see how um, the quality of scouting that this new regime has, right? Because they're not picking the easy blue chip guy that's going in the first round. They got to actually dig deep and go get some guys that they want to be able to contribute this year and beyond in the later rounds of the draft. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the Atlanta Falcons be able to do. I think as long as he gets Stefanski by his side, I think Reese will do all right with a better talented team. Yeah, I mean the one thing that and he even mentioned this, right? Tommy Reese, he even mentioned the fact that his first time he has not had, um, you know, success being a play caller was last year, right? All his other stops, now granted they was in college, but all his other stops, Notre Dame and Alabama, he did well, right? And and you say what you want to say about Nick Saban, but Nick Saban don't really make bad hires too many times. So he saw something in Tom Reese. He was offensive coordinator. They won the SEC championship that year, that 1 year stint with up under Nick Saban for Tommy Reese. So, you know, then he ended up a tight end coach in Cleveland a year after that. So he does have experience. It's not his first time calling plays. So, like I said, when you think about the art to it, it is an art, right? You got to be able to. I think that the easiest plays to do is the first 15 scripted play, right? If everything's working, you go right down the line with that. The harder thing is in game adjustments, things like that. Um, get into your 2 minute offense, get into your 4 minute offense. Those kind of things that you got to think about if you got to go to straight to the passing game because you're down, or you want to try to bleed the clock and go to the running game. So it's an art to it. The more experience that he gets, the better he's going to be. But just like Wallace said, that he will be able to, lean on Kevin Stefanski for all those things. And Kevin Stefanski mentioned Bill Callahan is going to be a great resource for Tom Reese. I do believe that being able to set up a run game and being able to set up pass protections for the quarterback is going to be huge. And I think Bill Callahan is going to definitely help with all those things. So, but there you have it, guys. Short video today. Um, Big things I want to talk about was Kyle Pitts, Kirk Cousins, get a little info what we heard from the coaching staff and in the front office today. We did hear from the president of football, but it's expectedly so. He's trying to make sure that he let those guys lead because he's the one that they're going to report to make sure everything goes the way it's supposed to. So um, there you have it, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Ricondo Real Falcon Fan. I'll be back once we get some more news on these Atlanta Falcons. Peace.